Hello everyone, welcome to Diplomatic Briefing. In the US government's open scheme to push supply chains away from China, countries like Vietnam are the first to be affected. On June 16, Reuters quoted three sources saying that during tariff negotiations, the US pressured Vietnam to reduce the use of Chinese technology and equipment exported to the US. The report said that Vietnam is a major manufacturing base for tech companies like Apple and Samsung, and these companies usually rely on components made in China. Meta and Google also have contractors in Vietnam producing products such as virtual reality headsets and smartphones. A person familiar with the discussion said that Vietnam has been engaging with local businesses to increase the supply of domestically produced components. A source familiar with the negotiations said that the United States has already asked Vietnam to reduce its reliance on Chinese high-tech. The source added that this is part of the supply chain restructuring, and it will also indirectly reduce the United States' dependence on Chinese components. Another source said that the ultimate goal of this move is to speed up the decoupling of US and Chinese high-tech industries, while at the same time boosting Vietnam's industrial capabilities. Take virtual reality devices assembled in Vietnam as an example. These products currently rely too heavily on Chinese technology. The source also emphasized that although the US has made broader requests for Vietnam to reduce its dependence on China, controlling the Chinese high-tech content in exported products remains the top priority. The report said that China is an important source of investment for Vietnam, and if there is a sudden adjustment to the current practices, it could impact China-Vietnam relations. A source told Reuters that local companies attending meetings organized by the Ministry of Industry and Trade recently expressed their willingness to adapt to the changes, but most companies warned that if immediate changes are required, their businesses would be destroyed. Industry executives said that although Vietnam has been gradually developing its own industrial ecosystem in recent years, it still lags far behind China in terms of supply chain scale and complexity. Carlo Chiandone, a supply chain expert based in Vietnam, said that Vietnam is about 15 to 20 years behind China in replicating the scale and maturity of its supply chain, but it is catching up quickly, especially in key sectors like textiles and electronics. Reuters previously cited sources reporting that the United States may force Vietnam to reduce its reliance on industrial imports from China. The source also said that if the United States' demand for Vietnam to effectively reduce its reliance on industrial imports from China is met, it will pose a serious challenge to the Southeast Asian country's economy. Vietnam's manufacturing output includes consumer goods such as Apple devices and Nike shoes, and is closely integrated with the much larger Chinese supply chain. Regarding the United States' use of tariffs to coerce other countries to restrict economic and trade cooperation with China, a spokesperson for China's Ministry of Commerce once emphasized that although it is in exchange for peace, compromise will not be respected. Attacking the interests of others in exchange for so-called exemptions for one's own temporary selfish interests is like courting death and will ultimately fail on both ends, harming others and not benefiting oneself. The spokesperson specifically pointed out that China firmly opposes any party making deals at the expense of China's interests. If such a situation arises, China will never accept it and will resolutely take reciprocal countermeasures. China has both the determination and the capability to safeguard its own rights and interests. To put it simply, first, the US is forming small circles and demanding that China be excluded from the US market. The problem is, producing expensive US exclusive products doesn't align with the global interests of multinational companies. In the end, the world's supply chain might end up becoming divided into two. The US exclusive versions will only get more and more expensive because they won't be able to enjoy the low-cost benefits brought by globalized supply chains. Second, judging from the past 6 months of China-US confrontations, whenever the US does something internationally that's unfavorable to China, China responds by tightening its control over rare earth exports that it had previously relaxed a bit. Third, countries like Vietnam, which have taken over some of China's assembly work, are indeed facing difficulties. The lesson learned from this is that China must master the technology for upstream production tools and raw materials in order to maintain its advantage in the global supply chain. Fourth, the US is trying to pressure countries that have close trade ties with China to decouple from China together with the US. But even the US itself can't do it, otherwise it wouldn't be so eager to negotiate with China. These are just tactics to intimidate their negotiating counterparts. Recently, the Trump Organization, led by the son of US President Trump, announced the launch of the Trump Mobile brand, entering the mobile phone and telecommunications services market. In August, they will be selling the T1 phone for $499, which is about 3,892 Hong Kong dollars, and they even claim it is designed and made in the US. However, outsiders have questioned the feasibility of this claim. According to a report by Apple Insider, the T1 involves many components that need to be imported and are subject to US tariffs, so selling it for under $500 is unlikely to generate any profit. The report also quoted analysts who revealed that the T1 specifications are very similar to the T-Mobile Rebel 7 Pro 5G, and it seems to be just a rebranded version of that phone. This phone is currently selling for only $169 on Amazon and is manufactured in China. According to a Bloomberg report on June 16, Trump's two sons, Eric Trump and Donald Trump Jr., announced the launch of the smartphone called T1 at Trump Tower in New York. The phone will feature a gold metal casing, with T1 and the American flag engraved on the back. It will run on the Android system, with storage capacity of only 12 GB plus 256 GB. They will also launch a mobile plan costing as much as $47.45 per month, to highlight Trump's status as the 45th and 47th President of the United States. According to the Trump Organization, after users purchase the plan, they can enjoy nationwide 5G coverage, telemedicine, roadside assistance for vehicles, as well as unlimited SMS service in 100 countries and regions around the world. To echo Trump's America First agenda, the T1 claims that its plans are designed and manufactured in the US, and also promotes that its entire call center service comes from American-based companies. When Eric Trump was interviewed by Fox News, he said, "Now when you make a call, you're calling St. Louis, Missouri, not a call center in Bangladesh." According to a Reuters report, almost all smartphones sold in the US are manufactured overseas, with major production locations including China, South Korea, and, in recent years, India and Vietnam. Currently, there's only one American company manufacturing smartphones domestically, which is Purism, headquartered in California. Their Liberty phone sells for as much as $1,999. It is understood that almost all of its components are made and assembled in the US, and even the operating system is developed by the company's in-house team. However, the phone's casing still has to come from China. Purism's CEO, Weaver, pointed out that if the Trump phone promises a price of $499 and is still made in the US, it looks like a typical marketing gimmick. In response to public doubts, Eric Trump vaguely stated in a blog interview that the Trump phone will eventually be fully manufactured in the United States. The report suggests that this implies the first batch of gold T1 phones to be delivered in August this year may not be made in the US. It's worth noting that Trump once explicitly threatened Apple, saying that if the iPhone wasn't made in the US, he would impose tariffs on it. According to Apple Insider, although the Trump Organization claims this smartphone is made in the US, it's actually just an affordable Android phone made in China, and its price is 3 times higher than on Amazon. Apple Insider believes that the T1 claims to be designed and made in the US mainly to target the iPhone, since Apple often promotes its phones as designed by Apple in California, but most of them are assembled in India or China. The report also points out that the T1 is scheduled to ship in August, which seems to be aimed at undermining the launch of the iPhone 17 series in September. On social media, some netizens spent an hour to find out where this phone is actually manufactured. Analyst Max Weber posted on X, saying that the T1 seems to be very similar to the T-Mobile Rebel 7 Pro 5G. Whether it's the display specs, camera resolution, or other details, they all match the T-Mobile device. And this smartphone is produced by WinGtech, a company under Chinese manufacturer Luxshare Precision, while T-Mobile itself is manufactured in Jiaxing, Maoshi, or Kunming in China. Apple Insider believes that the T1 might have only been modified in the US, but it wasn't designed or assembled in the US, it's basically just a rebranded smartphone. The report says that, for now, the T1 lacks detailed specifications for its processor chip. Although the major US mobile processor chip companies are headquartered in the United States, they still outsource chip production to third-party manufacturers, such as TSMC in Taiwan. Apple Insider believes that without investing a huge amount of money and years of planning with numerous supply chain partners, it's very difficult to move smartphone manufacturing to the US. For manufacturers like Purism, not all of their components come from the US either. The camera, memory, storage, processor, and screen are all imported. So, assembling smartphones in the US isn't completely impossible, it's just more difficult, and the production volume would definitely be quite low. Besides, the components needed to assemble this phone have to be imported. Unless the Trump administration reaches some kind of special agreement, these parts will be subject to tariffs, so selling the phone for $500 probably won't bring any profit. Therefore, unless a real supply chain miracle happens, it's extremely unlikely that this phone could be entirely made in the US. In conclusion, while Trump himself demands that other countries decouple from China, his own family is clearly going out of their way to make money, blatantly ignoring any conflicts of interest. Is the US still that lofty representative of universal values? It seems the US has pulled itself down from the pedestal.